Under the cover of the war in the Middle East, China is launching a large-scale military operation near Taiwan, and experts are already sounding the alarm as they are convinced that the US will not be able to help the self-governing island in the event of an attack. After all, Trump has already withdrawn some military ships from this region to conduct operations in the Middle East. Taiwan has reported renewed activity of Chinese air forces around the island of Taiwan after an unexplained break that lasted more than 2 weeks, sparking discussions in Taipei about Beijing's motives. China has effectively begun air operations aimed at intimidation. And this is happening against the backdrop of preparations for Donald Trump's visit to Beijing, as well as reports that the US is preparing a powerful military package for Taiwan worth $14 billion. My name is Alexi Pecci. Let's discuss this topic, but before we start, please subscribe. Subscribe to this channel, like the episode, leave any comment under this video, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel Pecci News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, China has started military air operations near Taiwan. On Sunday, March 15th, Taiwan reported renewed activity of the Chinese Air Force around the island after an unexplained break that lasted more than 2 weeks, sparking discussions in Taipei about the motives. Taiwan's Ministry of Defense reported in its daily briefing on Sunday that 26 Chinese military aircraft were detected in the Taiwan Strait over the past 24 hours. The last time such activity was reported was on February 25th, when about 30 aircraft were detected after Beijing announced it was conducting another patrol. Since February 27th, Taiwan had not reported any Chinese military activity until March 7th, when it said it detected only 2 aircraft to the southwest of the island. Since then, there have only been a few minor incidents. And now experts are sure that China was simply closely observing the war in the Middle East and weighing its options for how events might unfold. So, on the 27th, there were the last large-scale flyovers. Then on the 28th, the war in the Middle East began, and up until today, China has been holding back its military operations near Taiwan. China has not provided any explanations regarding its motives. However, on Saturday, March 14th, the Chinese Administration for Taiwan Affairs sharply criticized the island's president, William Lai, for a speech delivered on the same day in which he spoke about the need to increase defense spending and protect Taipei's democracy. The Chinese agency stated, quote, "People like Lai should not miscalculate. If they decide to take reckless risks, they will create a trap for themselves." China, which considers Taiwan its territory, usually sends fighter jets or drones to the island on a daily basis, and breaks in these flights are usually caused only by bad weather. That's all. Taiwan's Defense Minister Wellington Koo stated that although China's air activity had decreased, Chinese military ships around the island still remained, and the threat from Beijing had not disappeared. Officials and experts in Taipei say today that the reasons for the decrease in Chinese Air Force activity over the past couple of weeks may vary. From Beijing's attempt to revise its pressure campaign ahead of the planned visit by US President Donald Trump, which will take place at the end of this month, to these purges among high-ranking Chinese generals, which are being carried out by Chinese leader Xi Jinping. By the way, Donald Trump's visit is currently being prepared very actively, and it should be noted that China's military activity around Taiwan is a clear attempt to exert diplomatic pressure on the United States. Nothing more than that. The fact is that today, when the Chinese scrambled their aircraft around Taiwan, in Paris, trade representatives from the United States and China have begun negotiations to develop a plan for the summit of the two countries' leaders. The negotiations on the U.S. side were led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer, while on the Chinese side, Vice Premier He Lifeng led the talks. It is expected that the trade negotiators will eventually analyze the latest developments within the framework of the truce reached in November and discuss topics such as the war in Iran as well as investments and procurement. The results of these negotiations will form the basis for the visit of US President Donald Trump's meeting in China will take place from March 31st to April 2nd. The meeting is also the first between the parties after the US Supreme Court ruled that Trump did not have the authority to impose tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the tool he used to threaten tariffs on China of up to 145%. Therefore, China needs some additional leverage in the negotiations right now. On the other hand, it might not even be considered a trump card. On the other hand, the US is also putting military pressure on Beijing. Reuters reports that Trump may approve the sale of a record arms package to Taiwan right after the summit with Xi Jinping. The $14 billion arms deal could become the largest in history for the democratically governed island, which is facing increasing military pressure from China. The deal is not being disclosed ahead of Donald Trump's planned trip to Beijing from March 31st to April 2nd. The reason is obvious. And in February, Chinese leader Xi Jinping urged Trump to exercise caution regarding arms sales to Taiwan. Because right now, both sides will try their hardest to find common ground, but at the same time, both sides will be rattling their sabers as much as possible ahead of the meeting between the two leaders. So this operation around Taiwan can be interpreted in exactly that way. In addition, the media also reported that China privately warned the United States that large-scale sales of American weapons to Taiwan, particularly Patriot missile systems and other systems, could jeopardize Trump's visit to Beijing. If you proceed with the delivery, we'll cancel. By the way, this visit is also the reason for Donald Trump's caution in his statements when he comments on the possible military assistance from China and Russia to Iran. In general, there are no attacks on Taiwan expected right now. At least nothing will happen for sure before the beginning of April. What happens next depends on the outcome of Donald Trump's visit to Beijing. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. Also, if you found this episode interesting or useful, you can support the work of this YouTube channel with your donation or your subscription. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video, or use the QR code, it's the most convenient option. I will be grateful for any support you can give. That's all for now, take care of yourselves, goodbye everyone.